I was sitting there, just scrolling through my old save files, and I realized something that actually made me laugh a little. We all walk into the Emerald Grove convinced we're the solution. We pick the good dialogue, we pet the dog, we tell ourselves we're the moral center of the story, but then you look at your inventory, it's just full of stuff you took because the stats were high, not because it was right. It's funny, isn't it? Larian accidentally built a very loud, very expensive simulation of why our real world democracy is currently falling apart. It turns out we're just voters who happen to have better loot. We talk about justice while we're actually just scanning the room for the highest reward. We're remarkably good at pretending our personal convenience is a political philosophy. Think about that first hour in the Emerald Grove. You see the tieflings huddled there, fear etched into their pixelated faces. You see the druids being, well, druids, dogmatic, isolationist, and cold. You think that to yourself, okay, I'm going to fix this. You feel that familiar swell of heroics in your chest, the classic, the chosen one energy that RPGs have fed us for decades. But while Zephlor is pouring his heart about his people dying, literally pleading for their lives, a specific, darker part of your brain is already doing some very calculated math. You're looking at his gear, you're scanning the merchant's table nearby, you're calculating the weight of the silver platters in the nearby room versus their gold value. Psychologists call this cognitive dissonance. It's that weird, itchy tension that you feel when your actions don't actually match that shiny self-image you project. We tell ourselves we're the saviors of the refugees, but we spend 20 minutes trying to figure out how to steal a $1 ring without getting caught by the very guard we just promise to protect. We are, at our core, playing a double game. From what I read, from the Larian's website shows that the vast majority of us, around 90%, play the good path, and it's a staggering statistic. But we have to ask, why? Is it because we actually care about the systemic issues of the Sword Coast? Is it because we have a deep-seated moral objection to the absolute? Or is it because the good path is simply more efficient? In the economy of an RPG, the good path usually gives us more companions, more side quests, and better cumulative XP. We aren't being altruistic, we're just being performative heroes. We're essentially posting the digital equivalent of a black square on social media. But the second the dialogue box closes, we're practicing me first economics. We prioritize our character sheet over the community survival every single time. Then there's the gold. God, the gold. Have you ever noticed how much junk you carry? We hoard with a desperation that would be pathological in any other context. We take everything that isn't nailed down, rotten tomatoes, empty bottles, rusty spoons, just in case. In economics, there's a concept called hyperbolic discounting. It's a human glitch where we'd rather have a tiny, useless reward right now than a much higher, more important outcome later. In Baldur's Gate 3, this manifests as stripping economy of its resources for a few extra coins. Even when we have thousands of gold pieces sitting in a camp, we want that dopamine hit of the epic tier item, It's the same reason we, as a society, might vote for a short-term subsidy or a tiny tax break even when we can see the local bridge is literally falling down into the river. We prioritize our own personal inventory over the national infrastructure. We build these personal armories, chests full of scrolls we will never cast and potions we will never drink, while the actual community around us is one bad day away from total collapse. We aren't building a society in Faerûn. We're building a museum of our own greed and calling it saving the world. It gets even funnier when you look at how we handle the politics of the game. We treat diplomacy like a charisma check, not a process. We honestly believe that if we just say the right thing or hit the right dialogue button, a 100-year-old racial conflict will simply vanish. This is the Dunning-Kruger effect in full swing. We think we understand the complex geopolitics of the Shadow Cursed lands because of, we rolled at 20 on a persuasion check, but real governance isn't a cutscene you can skip through. It's slow, it's boring, and it's deeply unrewarding. Because the game makes diplomacy feel like a magic trick, we've been conditioned to hate the boring parts of real democracy. We want the persuade button for the climate crisis or the housing market. And when we mess up, we save scum. We hit F8 the second things get uncomfortable or we don't get the outcome we want. In the real world, we try to do the same thing by demanding a total redo of the system every few years, refusing to actually sit with the permanent scars of our own collective choice. We want the perfect ending without the messy, compromising middle. We want the victory screen without the accountability. And then we have to talk about the Mintara problem or Astarion or any of the problematic favorites from people out there. Objectively, these characters are nightmare fuel for any functioning society. They are self-serving, often cruel, and ideologically disastrous, but for a huge chunk of the player base, the villain route or the forgiveness arc becomes remarkably tempting the moment they show an ounce of aesthetical appeal. This is the halo effect. It's a psychological bias where we attribute good qualities like leadership, honesty, or misunderstood depth to people just because they're attractive or charismatic. We aren't voting for platforms in Baldur's Gate, we're voting for the vibes. We'd let the grove burn if the person holding the torch had enough main character energy to keep us entertained for the next 10 hours. It's a terrifying mirror of how modern political movements leverage aesthetic appeal to distract us from disastrous policy platforms. We'll follow a charismatic disaster right off a cliff as long as they have a good soundtrack and a compelling backstory. Finally, we have to talk about the books. All those scattered notes, those dusty journals tucked away in the corner of a basement that explain why the goblins are actually there, or what the druids were dealing with 3 generations ago. We treat them like terms and conditions. We just scroll through, looking for the quest update to pop up on the right side of the screen, and then we close them. We want the action without the context. It's the same way we consume the news now. We want the headline, we want the outrage, and we want to know which side to pick so we can get back to the main quest of our lives. We've replaced information with intuition. We think because we have a feeling about the situation, we don't need the facts. But democracy is literally built on the facts we find boring. It's built on the fine print. When we skip the lore in Baldur's Gate 3, we aren't just saving time. We're training ourselves to be shallow. We're training ourselves to make a massive, world-altering decisions based on a 3-sentence summary from a stranger. We forget that in real society, nobody is the main character. There is no TAF. There is just a sea of people who all think they're the hero, all hoarding their own little piles of loot, all skipping the books, and all wondering why the world feels so broken. So, I think Larian didn't just make an RPG, they made a mirror. When you finally get those end slides and you see the ripples of your choice, it's usually a bit of a wake-up call. You realize you weren't saving a society, you were just disrupting it for your own narrative satisfaction. You were moving through a world, taking what you wanted, and leaving a trail of heroic destruction behind because it felt good in the moment. Democracy is actually the boring work we all skip in the game. It's the tedious inventory sorting, it's reading the lore books to understand why people are angry, it's making the compromise that leaves you with less gold but keeps the system stable. It's the stuff we habitually avoid because it's not fun. So, next time you're about to click that persuade option or loot a chest in the house you just saved, take a look. Look at your save file. Is it a map of a leader, or is it data-driven map of a consumer who just happens to have a sword? Because out there, where we live, there is not a load game button for when the system finally breaks under the weight of our own convenience. We're all applying the same game, but we've forgotten that the goal isn't just to win, it is to make sure the world is still there when the credits roll.